My name is Justin Hayes, and I am an audit partner here at Katz, Sapper Miller. Within the audit group, I also lead our technology. So I help focus all the efforts from a technology side within the audit group, and then I also lead our not-for-profit and government industry group. So KSM is headquartered here in Indianapolis. We're a little over 80 years old. Started as a small firm here in Indianapolis and have continued to grow and become a relatively large player within the Indianapolis market. And over the last few years, we've started expanding outside of Indianapolis. We now have offices in Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Cincinnati, New York City. As we were taking a look at the technologies that we use and just where the industry is heading, we knew that we needed to make a change in this core platform that we use for our audit technology. We've been on CCH's engagement for about 25 years at this point in time, and had never really explored if there were other options out there. And for a long time within the market, it felt like you were either an engagement firm or you were a caseware firm. And as we've seen technology grow and adapt, we've seen other options start popping up. And we've also seen opportunities where technology can really be utilized within the audit process. And so we were trying to figure out a way that we could really pull technology in, help create efficiencies within our audit, help drive quality within our audit, and hopefully combat the issues that are within the labor market right now. There's fewer people coming into the accounting profession, but yet there's still a high need for our services. So trying to figure out how we can truly leverage technology in order to meet our clients' needs and providing them with a high quality product. And so as we took a look at that, we really wanted to look at a core platform for our audits that was just different than what we currently use now. How can we use technology to our advantage rather than really just having a core platform that stored documents and allowed for document storage on a go-forward basis? Determining what audit platform we wanted to move to was a pretty lengthy process. We knew quite a few years back, 2017, 2018, that we really needed to do something. But at that point, there weren't a lot of options within the US market. And we did get involved with the dynamic audit solution, became a stakeholder firm within that platform. And initially, we're really excited about what that platform looked like and where it was heading towards. As we kind of got through COVID and that, we really determined we needed to figure out something quick, something soon that we could get transitioned to. And so that started a process with myself and a small committee of individuals where we actually evaluated about 20 different audit platforms as we went through. And that small group of individuals narrowed that down to 3 platforms. And those 3 platforms were Dynamic Audit Solution, CCH's Engagement Online, and then the Inflow software system. And once we narrowed it down to those 3 systems, then we asked each of those companies to come in and present to our full audit partner, audit director group, and then a sampling of people from our manager, associate, and senior associate level. Then we had a pretty lengthy survey once we had completed those demos and really kind of working through what people liked, what they didn't like from what they saw in the demos, and ultimately picking what platform they felt like would be best to move forward with. And we kind of heard overwhelming response back that Inflow was the route people wanted to try out. And it was interesting as we looked in because some individuals were, hey, change is hard. Do we really need to go through this? But by and large, most people are like, if we're gonna make a change, let's make a change. And Inflow felt like it was an entirely different software platform than where we currently were and offered a lot of opportunities that our current platform doesn't provide for us. So once we had gone through that process, then we did a small pilot session. We had probably about 15 to 20 people who went through and piloted 4 different engagements for us. Now, those were audits that we had already completed, and so we were rerunning them through within the platform to kind of evaluate, does everything that the demo said it would do? Does everything that the sales reps had indicate, does it really play out that way? And garnered a lot of really good feedback from that pilot session. As we got through that pilot session, again, there was kind of overwhelming commitment from the pilot group of, hey, this is something we should move forward with. This is something we need to continue to look into. And so from there, then we looked at expanding out and really starting to look at an implementation plan that we could utilize for the Inflow software. I think there's really three primary objectives that we have in moving to the inflow platform. First is creating better quality. I think we provide a very high quality product right now, but there's always opportunity to continue to grow that quality and taking a look at how we can do that by utilizing technology. In the past, our quality has really been driven by our people, and it's been focused on manual processes that have allowed us to maintain that high level of quality. And we want to look at how we can use technology to really help drive quality, and be able to take out some of those manual processes along the way. The second big factor for us in moving inflow is efficiency, and it kind of aligns right with that. Currently the platform that we were on prior to inflow, it really just stored documents. There wasn't really anything that technology did for us throughout the audit process. Whereas we move into inflow, we've got the opportunity to really use the technology through different modules. Being able to ingest that general ledger and use the detect module as we go through. We've also seen a significant reduction in the amount of review comments as files are being reviewed by managers, directors, and partners. And I think that's really driven by the connectivity of the software. The fact that as our associates, our senior associates go through and they identify risks, if those risks don't align to other aspects of planning, the system's flagging that for them up front, and they're fixing it on the forefront before it's come to manager director for that detail review or the partner for that partner level review. And so efficiency is really a big driver in that. And we see that the amount of time it takes our managers, our directors, our partners to review those files is decreasing. And that allows us to really decrease time, at the levels that we need to decrease that time. It allows our partners, our managers, our directors to look at how they're using their time, what other aspects could they be doing that are value added to the firm. We also know that, as individuals come in, they've really grown up with technology their entire life as we look at new hires as they're coming in. And there's kind of a baseline expectations of what technology will do within the environment that they're working. And again, our prior platform was very much just a document storage system. The technology didn't do anything to help out. And so it's been interesting as we've gone through, the last couple of classes we've had come in are really being trained on both systems as we're working through this implementation. And we did our own little kind of survey at the end of those trainings before they dove in. They come in and they haven't seen any audit platforms, and they look at the two through training. We ask, well, which system do you want to be in? And it's almost unanimous every time that they want to be in inflow. And so it's really also just looking at how do we continue to engage, our younger generations as they come in as associates for us. How do we make sure that the technology that we're utilizing, it is cutting edge and it's aligning with what their expectations are, and it's also creating those opportunities for quality and efficiency. I would say there were a few factors that really drove our decision towards inflow. One was just innovation. Like it looked different, it felt different, and the connectivity that occurred there. One of the biggest challenges I think with current audit platforms is that you're really relying on a manual process to create the connectivity between risks, between estimates that are identified, the procedures that we're doing in response to those risks. And given the fact it's a manual process, there's always that potential that something gets missed as it's being updated, as it's being completed. What we liked about inflow is the fact that that's all connected. As I work through risk and response, the system's checking to see, do we have significant estimates identified where we're saying there's a risk for significant estimates? Have we walked through the business process, the controls that would impact a significant risk that we've identified? And then it's directly tying the work programs and the procedures to that risk that we've indicated. And if the system feels like we haven't addressed that risk, it's flagging it. It's letting us know that, hey, we need to go back and look at these procedures. So that was a driver for us. The other big differentiator for us was just the inflow team itself. Throughout the entire process, the team was very cordial, very helpful, very open to thoughts, concerns, suggestions. I think one of the biggest impacts for me at the very start, we had, an initial call with Mark, who's, the founder of Inflow. And we were talking through, and he'd asked the question of like, well, what other software do you guys use right now? And I commented that we use SureLink and that our team absolutely loves SureLink. Our clients love SureLink. And what really caught me in that conversation was Mark's comment is, hey, if you guys like SureLink and it's working, use it. don't make a change at all. And that was polar opposite of every other, interview that we had done with an audit platform, where it was, hey, you guys might use SureLink, but we've got this product that's just as good. It'll work better. It's more integrated with our systems. And it felt very much kind of that sales pitch, where from the start and talking with Mark, it felt much more like a partnership, and it felt more like what's right for KSM, what's best for KSM, and how do we support and supplement that. And throughout the entire process, it's felt like we've kind of had a voice in the process, in the system, the ability to customize things, the fact that we will make suggestions and feel like we're heard. And that's something we didn't feel like we got with the other platforms. Maybe that would have been there if we would have moved forward, but we didn't feel that through that process of evaluation. I think as we looked at inflow, some of the wow aspects that stuck out to us, it's basic, but it's the connectivity. The fact that that risk and response is directly connected to the work that we're doing, and that the system is flagging that throughout the process if there's challenges or issues within there. The other big thing for us was detect. It feels like manual journal entries can be a challenge to go through and test. And when I say a challenge to go through and do a good test on those entries. And too often it's easy to do a random sample, and maybe you're getting good data from that, maybe you're not. But in taking a look at the detect module and its process of going through and evaluating the transactions coming in from the GL detail, and really helping flag where there's riskier transactions, so that we could key our testing more directly into where there's risk for the client, there's risk for that material misstatement, versus just a haphazard or a random sample as we go through that process. I think we're excited on a go-forward basis to look at how we can incorporate a revenue cascade, how we can incorporate an explore, and really dive into those substantive analytical procedures and seeing how we can leverage that information to drive quality, but also to really key in on where that potential risk is, and looking at those transactions that really drive the risk within the financial statements. I think the data analytics aspects of inflow is one of the pieces that we're most excited about as we look at moving forward, and really being able to utilize that technology to harness the power of analytics, to harness the power of technology, to drill in and see trends within our clients that maybe we couldn't seen as easily before, to be able to key in on true transactions that would be risk-based transactions for us, that again could easily get lost in a general ledger that's got thousands upon thousands of transactions, and knowing that the ability to go in and manually try to pull out those is almost impossible. But being able to utilize the technology as we go through that. Analytics are becoming a huge part of audit, and it's interesting for me. I run our not-for-profit government practice, and we present to the boards of almost every one of our clients. And as we go through, we've kind of got a set presentation that we go through about 30 minutes. And at the tail end of that are analytics that we've pulled together for that client. And what amazes me is as we go through that process, it's inevitable. Everybody's kind of stone-faced as we go through the first part. And then we get to the analytics, and it's kind of like that board comes alive. And that's when they've really got questions for us. And hey, I see this trend that you're talking about. Like, what does that mean for us? And should we be doing something to curb that? And right now, that's a very manual process for us as we go through. And so we're excited about the opportunity to use those analytics within the audit, and to really look at how that shapes our audit as we go forward, as well as the value add that that provides to our client, to be able to go back to our client and say, hey, look, as we ran through this, like, here's some key areas where there's real high risk, and have you thought about these? Or again, being able to look at those trends and compare those trends out over time, being able to compare those trends to potentially industry benchmarks, and saying, hey, this is kind of how you're stacking up against these industry benchmarks, and having quick access to that information. One of the biggest challenges right now is that key is the quick access to it. We don't have modules built that provide those analytics for us, and the Inflow platform does. And so it really allows us to harness that power. The last piece of the analytics that we're excited about is looking at how does that impact our actual testing. As we get in and we get comfortable with the analytics and we truly use those substantive analytics, what does that allow us to reduce in our testing as we're able to go through and really harness the power of those analytics? I think as you're taking a look at a new platform, it's really starting off with evaluating where are you currently, and one of those biggest aspects is thinking what can you take on, and at what speed can you take it on. I think that that speed of being able to take it on is probably the biggest impact to success in that implementation, and making sure that as you're evaluating software, is just understanding that there's going to be change. There will be change in your processes. There's going to be change in the way that things occur within the audit. There could be a change in the order in which things are completed within the audit. And knowing that change is hard, really trying to work to get buy-in from your full group to make sure that they're on board with that change. Because anytime you make a change, there's going to be bumps and bruises along the way. That's going to happen. But if you can get buy-in at the forefront, everybody agrees that yes, this change is needed, and yes, this is the change, the direction we need to head, you'll weather those storms a lot better throughout that implementation. And so the second point to that would be is really getting people involved at all levels. You want to make sure that the entire team is committed to that change and the solution that you've selected as you go through the process versus feeling like something's being mandated down to them and they're having to change whether they want to change or not. That attitude really, I think, drives the success of making a change in platforms and having a successful implementation for that change.